Hi everyone, my name is Sarthak and I'm one of the programmers on FTC T9794 Wizards.exe. In this tutorial, I'm going to walk through what GitHub is and how your team can use it to simplify your software and version control tasks. GitHub is a platform designed for software developers to host, manage, and review code. Essentially, it's a service that allows you to have version control for your software. Using Git, which is the software that tracks the changes in your source code during the development process. Using Git will allow your team's programmers to coordinate work and collaborate on different tasks within the software. Now, before we dive into the details and features GitHub offers and how your team can use it, we'll need to download the Git software and create a GitHub account. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to github.com, and I'm just going to sign out real quick so you see what the page looks like. But when you go, the web page should look like this. If you don't have an account, go ahead and create one. Just put in the information they ask for. But if you do, you can go ahead and sign in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. So the next thing we'll have to do is download Git. And as I mentioned earlier, Git is the system software that tracks the changes in your code. So if you just Google download Git in your search bar, you can just go to this link. We'll also put the link in the description below the video. Then go ahead and download the installation wizard for whatever OS you have on your computer and go ahead and install Git. Once all of that is set, we can go ahead and start setting it up and beginning to learn how to use it. All right, now that everything is set up, we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is go back to github.com. And once you've created your account and signed in, your screen should look somewhat like this, but obviously if you have a new account, you'll have less activity. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over to this left-hand side menu where it says repositories and go ahead and press new. A repository is a digital directory and storage space where you can upload your files and access all of your project source code. To create a new repository, make sure you click that button. And now we're going to go ahead and fill out some of the information over here. So the first thing it's going to ask you is for a name. So I'm going to call my FTC version control demo. You can give it a description, just a small and short one. So I'm going to say version control for FTC Android project. And then you can choose between public or private, and then go ahead and create your repository. So now that the repository is created, what we're going to do is go ahead and connect our FTC Android Studio project to this github.com repository. And now this is where I'm going to introduce one of the first basic Git command prompts. So I'm going to navigate to the file directory where I want to store my Android Studio project. Now I don't have one yet, so I'm going to right click and press git bash here. Now this option should show up once you've installed Git, which we did in the first part of the video. Now a command prompt like this should pop up on your screen. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone the FTC SDK into my repository. So cloning means that you'll be able to download another public project off of GitHub to your local file directory. So if you haven't created a project for this season, I'm going to show you how you can do so by cloning the FTC SDK for the 2019-20 game. If you already have an Android Studio project, you should not follow the steps, but you should still watch so you can learn how to clone a repository. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type git clone, and then if we go back to our web browser and just Google FTC SDK Skystone, then the first link that should come up on Google is the FTC SDK repository. So you want to go ahead and copy this link, go back to the git bash right over here, and then paste this link in. You can go ahead and press enter, and then if you'll notice that if we go back into our file directory, the Skystone folder has been created, and it's going to start populating the folder with all of those FTC files that you saw on the github.com webpage, everything over here. So if we go back, it looks like it's almost done. But once this is created, you should be able to open it up like any other Android Studio project as an existing Android Studio project, which we'll do in a moment once this finishes up. All right, looks like it's finished. So if we go into the folder, you'll see that all of the files and folders are there as we saw on the github.com FTC repository. So now the next step we're going to do is we're going to connect it to the repository we just created on github.com on our personal accounts. So the first step we're going to have to execute, and actually some of the steps are right here. Um, we want to follow the directions for pushing an existing repository from the command line. So what we're going to do is we're going to add something called a remote. A remote is a connection to an external repository. So we want to type git remote -v. Sorry, we're going to type git. Oh, here's the problem. So once you clone the repository, it creates this new folder called Skystone. So we actually have to navigate into that folder, as our file directory right now is just version control demo. So you can do that by typing cd for change directory and then type in Skystone. Alternatively, you could just go into the folder and click git bash here again. But since I already changed the directory, I don't have to do that. So what I'm going to type again is git remote -v. And it's going to show you that there's already an existing remote. So the origin is the FTC SDK for the Skystone game. Now we want to be able to add and connect to the repository we just made. So what we're going to have to do is type git remote add, then we're going to say team_repo, short for repository, and then we're going to go ahead and copy this link just by pressing that button, and then we can paste it into here. So now that it's complete. So what we want to do is add all of the files in our local file directory, all of these, and push them onto the GitHub repository. So this is going to introduce two more functions, if you will. The first one is called commit. So what to do? What commit means is that you've made some changes. In this case, we've added all of our files, and you've established that this is essentially a checkpoint in your development history, and you want to be able to save it. So what we want to do is we want to type git add period. This will add all of the files that have been changed. So in this case, all the files that we added to the repository. The next thing we're going to do is say git commit -m, which stands for message. And now we're going to give a message describing what's happened. So I'm going to type in initial project commit. And you can go ahead and press enter. Okay. And then once you can do that, you can say git push -u, and you want to type the name of the remote that we're going to push to, which is team_repo. And you want to type master. So what's going to do is it's going to ask you for your username. So you type in your username, then it will prompt you for your password. It'll either prompt you in the command line prompt, or it'll open up a separate dialog window like it has done in my case. So just type in your password. And now it's going to start pushing all of the files. Now let me just explain the command we typed in. So the command we executed was called push, which explains the git push. The -u is going to make this remote, team repo, the default remote that you push and pull from, since this is what you're going to be working with most of the time, not the FTC SDK, but your own personal repository. And then you have to type in the name of your remote, which is team_repo, and you're going to type in the branch that you're going to have to push into. And I'm going to explain that later, but the master branch is what you will be working with most of the time. So make sure you include that at the end. But we'll get into branches a little bit more later in the video. So it looks like it is almost done. Okay, now it's done, pushing all of the files onto the GitHub repository. So now if you refresh, you can see, oh, sorry. Yeah, you can see that it has all of the project files that we added onto here. And it has the history of the one commit that we've made. So just to review that a little bit, we were able to add a new remote, another connection to a github.com repository by typing the git remote add function and giving it a name and the URL. We were able to add all the changed files, in this case all the files we added to the file directory, by git add period. We typed a commit message and we pushed all of that onto our GitHub repository and set the team repo to the default one by using the -u command in the middle of that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up my Android Studio project, and I'm going to walk through some of the Git functionalities that are built into Android Studio. Now I'm going to pause the video while my Android Studio project loads up, as it'll take a little bit of time, and then we'll go ahead and get started again once it's done. So what you want to do when you get your Android Studio open up, you'll want to press open an existing Android Studio project, and then you'll want to navigate to the file directory, Mine's on my desktop where you stored your project. So I'm just going to go to version control demo and then click Skystone. Go ahead and press OK. And it should start opening up your file contents, loading all the components, and initializing a quick Gradle build or sync. Now, I'm just going to suggest some items over here in case you guys have any problems while opening up this project. FTC is using the newest IntelliJ modules and the Gradle version, so you'll have to update your Android Studio project to one of the more recent versions. I hadn't updated mine in 8 months, so when I initially tried to load the newest repository, I was getting some errors, but I just had to download the newest patch update for Android Studio, and I can quickly show you how to get to that while this is loading. If you just go to Help, find Action, then you press Update. You can go check for updates, actually. Or sorry, no, updates in the settings. It'll open up this window, and then you can, it'll say automatically check for updates, and then you can just press check now. My version should be the latest version, which is Android Studio 3.4.2, and I would recommend upgrading to that. But once you do that, everything should be good for your project, and we're just going to go ahead and wait for this to load. But while we're waiting, I'm going to explain a couple more of Git's basic functions. So we talked about cloning, committing, and pushing so far, but Android Studio and Git has some other functions. So the first one is called a pull. So this a pull is a way of updating your project. So let's say that your team member adds a new program, commits the program, and pushes it onto the github.com repository. The github.com repository and your team members will have that updated file, but your local project will not. So essentially, a pull and updating the project will allow you to update your own local directory to change the files and add any new files that were added in that last in the last push by your teammate. So this way you can keep your projects up to date, collaborate on different files at the same time, and make sure everything fits together in the end. This way you won't have any conflicts, and this you can still collaborate without having to email code or re-downloading projects or anything. So what we'll do is you can see over here, there's a button to update the project. And to the right of that, you can see that there's a button to commit, like we did in the command line prompt, but actually Android Studio has its own way of doing it in here to make it a little easier for you. That way, when you're doing things in your project, you don't have to constantly go back to the command line prompt. Some of the other Git functions, which we'll talk about later in the video, are also housed in this directory right over here. And it looks like, so my Gradle has to be updated, so I'm just going to go ahead and press update. And that'll actually give us a good segue into how to use the Android Studio commit function once this is finished. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while this finishes up. Alright, so it looks like the Gradle build has finished. So since I updated my Gradle, alright, we'll get back to that in a moment. But so what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead to the team code folder, and I'm going to make a new class. So I'm just going to create just a sample teleop program. So just teleop. And then the first thing Android Studio should do is it's going to prompt you to add this file to Git. You want to press yes so that Git starts tracking it and tracks the changes that you make in the file. So any files that are not added to Git will have this red lettering over here, but that will change in a second since we just added it, and it should change to green, which indicates that, yep, there we go. Green indicates that a new file has been created since your last commit. This is just one of the ways Android Studio shows the changes as you develop your code. So I'm just going to start typing in the basic framework for a teleop program. I'm just going to say extends op mode. And yep, there we go. And then it'll ask me to implement the methods. So let's say I'm just going to leave it like this for now. I've created a file and I want to save that. So what you can do is you can go into over here, press commit, and it will open up a window where it shows you the files that have been changed. So since I updated my Gradle earlier, it's going to show that my build.gradle has changed, and it's going to show that I created a new teleop program. So you can see over here that it showed that a single line changed. That's why that the file over here, you can see it's blue. So blue indicates that something has been changed within the file. However, the tally program is green, indicating that the new file was created entirely. So what I'm going to say in my commit message is updated Gradle file settings and created an empty tally program. What you can do is then you can press commit. Now you've locally created that commit and saved your changes, but we haven't pushed that commit to to GitHub.com just yet. To do that, you can use the keyboard shortcut Control Shift K, and it'll show you the commit or any other commits that you have to push. Then you can go ahead and press push. It'll start the process over here. And once it's finished, we can go to our GitHub.com repository right over here, our personal one. So I'm just going to wait for this to finish. Yep, there you go. It says push successful. Go back over here and refresh this page. So you can see 32 seconds ago, I committed that I updated the Gradle file settings and created an empty tally program. So that's the first example of how you can use GitHub for your team. So someone created a new file and changed some settings. Everyone should have that new file and those new Gradle settings, so they committed it and pushed it to github.com, and everyone else should be able to update their projects. So now the next thing I'm going to actually cover is updating a project. So I want to go to the github.com repository, and I rarely do this, but I want to upload a file from the web browser. And I have a text file over here, just called version control test file. It just has one line that says test. And then I'm going to press commit changes. What this will do is it'll upload the text file to the repository. Yep, it says added files via upload. And you can see that I have my text file right here with that one line that says test. Now, if I go back to my Android Studio project, I don't see that text file in here, right? It's not in my project root folder, is it? No, it's not here. But what I can do is if I press update and press OK, it's going to fetch from the GitHub repository it's connected to, and it's going to update, and it should, yep, there you go. It's going to say one file updated. So anytime there are changes, Android Studio will log them for you. So you can go ahead and press view, and from the server, it says that one item was created, version control test file. And actually, we can now see that file right over here. And if you double click to open it, the contents will be the exact same as what I uploaded to the github.com repository. So by now, you should be able to see and understand how to use the GitHub's update project and commit changes functions. Those will be the two used most on a day-to-day basis while developing your software. Now, the next thing I'm going to cover is the revert function. So let's say that someone messes up the code in some way. So I create a variable, say double x equals 0.4. But what if I accidentally typed an integer? That's going to create an error. And what if I accidentally made that change and it created errors all over the place? It can be sometimes annoying to change a bunch of things at once and make it the way it used to be. So there are two ways you can fix this. The first is you'll see that there's a green line over here. This indicates that something was added to the code. So you can click this little revert button over here, and it'll change the code back to the way it was. Alternatively, what you can do is you can go up here and press the revert button, choose the files that you want to revert. So everything in that file will be changed back to the way it was before. So you can press revert, and you can see that those two lines will be removed. Now, something else to notice is if lines of the code change, instead of being added, lines were changed, the line indicator on the side will be blue instead of green. So like I'm going to type linear op mode instead of op mode, and you'll see that when I implement my methods and delete these ones, it's going to say I changed something over here, I changed something over here, and I removed some lines. So GitHub and Git will track within Android Studio what's changing, which can make it easy for you to visualize things that have happened since the previous version, which can help you debug in certain cases. But if you don't want to make the changes and something's not working, you can always revert back to the previous version of the code by pressing that revert button. So those cover the high-level functions that Git offers in Android Studio, but I want to go into one slightly more advanced topic, and that's called branches. I briefly touched on it earlier, but so when you create your GitHub repository, there is a single branch called master. Now, I want to give a hypothetical scenario. Let's say that a teammate starts working on some experimental code that we're not sure if it's going to work or we're not sure that we're going to implement it in the future, but we were going to start working on it for now and see how it progresses. While we don't want to affect the original code, we can create a branch so that person can work with a copy of the current code and develop it on the side. And if it ends up working out, it can be merged back with the original code. You can think of it like a tree. You're creating a branch off the original code to start doing something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new branch. You can click this menu right over here, press new branch, type in the name. So I'm going to call it beta branch. Press OK. And what you'll see is it used to say master over here, but now it says beta. That means we're editing the beta branch. So I'm just going to go back to my team code folder, source, main, Java, our main package, and I'm going to create a class that's just called beta. You want to add it to Git. And now what you'll see is I'm going to go ahead and commit it. So just press the little check mark over there. And then you can say created beta class on the beta branch. So you can go ahead and commit and push. If you press the little drop down menu here, you can do both at the same time. So it's going to do a quick analysis of the code. It'll perform the commit, and then it will push all the files onto there. So if we go back to our Android Studio, our GitHub.com repository, once this push finishes, it'll just take a moment. Oh, it's going to ask me for my username and password. Whoops, maybe I typed it in wrong. Hold on. Let me try this one more time. Just make sure. Oh, here's the issue. So what you want to do is you want to be working on the, let's see, make sure you're on team repo and not origin. That's what you'll want to do. So let me just try pushing again. So Control Shift K. Yeah, here's the issue. You want to change this to team repo. That should be your default one because you don't have permission to push the FTC SDK. You want to be pushing to your own. To your team repository, which you do have permission to push to, obviously, since you're the one that made it. So go ahead and push those changes. It might ask you to log in again. There you go. It looks like it's almost done pushing. Now, if I go back over here and refresh, looks like it automatically did refresh on its own. You can see that there's a new branch. Oh, whoops. Let me refresh the page. There's a new branch called beta. So if you go to the beta branch, you can see that it's one commit ahead of the master. That means that since you made a copy of the master, the changes we just made on the beta branch aren't on there. Instead, the beta branch has 4 commits, whereas the master branch has 3. So you can see that GitHub.com has tracked that we created a beta class on the beta branch. If you actually click that message, you can see the changes that were made and what files were made during that commit. But now let's say that that program works and our team wants to use it. We have to merge it back to the original code. So what we can do is do a compare and pull request. So it'll compare the beta to the base master and just say create a beta class on the beta branch. And then you can say create pull request. This creates some documentation that of what changes were made and what you're going to be merging into the master branch again. So it's going to GitHub will automatically check that there are no conflicts, and if there are no conflicts, you can go ahead and press merge pull request, confirm the merge. And then once it's been merged, it closes the pull request and you can safely delete the branch since now that both the branches are even. So if we go back to the code, there's only one branch now master, but you can see the latest commit was the pull request from the beta branch earlier. And now on the master branch, the latest commit is there. So what you're going to have to do now is in your Android Studio project, you'll see Git, but you want to check out the master branch as the beta branch no longer exists anymore. Initially, you'll see that the beta class that we created isn't there anymore because we have to update our master branch since we just did the pull request online. So you can just click the pull button right here, update project, press OK. It'll fetch and update as you can see at the bottom over here. And the changes should pop up right over here. Yep. So there's a new beta class right there. You can see it pop up in the menu over here. And if we go into over here, you'll see that the remote branches are just the two master ones, the team repo master. So we can actually go ahead and delete the beta branch safely since there are no new changes on there. Now, one thing that may be confusing is you see that there are two remote branches, origin master and team repo master. Since we cloned the repository off the github.com FTC repository, the original origin um, is going to be the FTC SDK. So what you want to do is every time you want to update from the FTC SDK, so say there's a new version released, let me go back to the website. So say version 5.1 was released during the season, and we want to update to that. So what we're going to do is we can go back to our git bash. Then we would type git pull origin and then the name of the branch master. Keep an eye out because sometimes there can be alpha and beta branches, so you just want to make sure you got the right branch typed in over there. And you can see that it's pulling from this URL right over here, github.com/ftc/skystone. And since we just cloned the repository, there have been no changes in the last 20 minutes, so it's going to say already up to date. So every time there's a new version released, you can just do that to make your life a lot easier. Otherwise, if you're not using GitHub, you'll have to download new projects, copy and paste old files, and it can just be a super annoying process. But by doing it this way, it'll make everything a whole lot easier for you. So by now, you guys should understand how to perform basic Git functions like cloning, pulling, committing, and pushing, how to do those same functions in Android Studio using the UI options available to you, and how to create, delete, and merge different branches in your github.com repository. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions about the video contents or would like to learn some more about GitHub and some of its more advanced features, you can just shoot us a question in the comments below, and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks for watching.